وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردن الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا من قبلهم من القرون إنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كلا لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون. والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم. لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون. وآية لهم إنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون. وإن نشاء نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاع إلى حين. وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون. وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين. وإذا قيل لهم انفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا نطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين. ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون. ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون. قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون. فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون. إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ضلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم. وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أحد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم. وقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون. هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون. اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكشه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا إنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللنا لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم يرى الإنسان إنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إن أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العظيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد. ہائے فاطمہ زہرا، ہائے فاطمہ زہرا، ہائے فاطمہ زہرا، ہائے فاطمہ زہرا، شکست تربت پر مرتضیٰ کا ہے نوحہ، ہائے غربت زہرا، ہائے غربت زہرا، کیا دیا ہے امت نے اجر یہ رسالت کا، ہائے غربت زہرا، ہائے غربت زہرا، ایک شکست تربت پر مرتضیٰ کا ہے نوحہ، ہائے غربت زہرا، ہائے غربت زہرا، بعد مصطفیٰ سب نے کیسے منہ کو موڑا ہے، در گرا کے بی بی پر پسلیوں کو توڑا ہے، قبر میں بھی ہے تازہ، قبر میں بھی ہے تازہ زخم اس کے پہلو کا، ہائے غربت زہرا، ایک شکست تربت پر مرتضیٰ کا ہے نوحہ، ہائے غربت زہرا، ہائے غربت زہرا، اب بھی دین کا دشمن فاطمہ کا دشمن ہے، اب بھی دین کا دشمن فاطمہ کا دشمن ہے، ہر جگہ چراغا ہے، سب مدینہ روشن ہے، قبر پر ضعیفہ کی، قبر پر ضعیفہ کی ایک دیا نہیں جلتا، ہائے غربت زہرا، ہائے غربت زہرا، روح کانپ جاتی ہے، بات یہ رلاتی ہے، ان مدینے والوں کو نیند کیسے آتی ہے، پتھروں میں سوتی ہے، پتھروں میں سوتی ہے ام زینب کبریٰ، ہائے غربت زہرا، ایک شکستہ تربت پر مرتضیٰ کا ہے نوحہ، ہائے غربت زہرا، ہائے غربت زہرا، تازیانہ جب مارا گھر میں آ کے انفس نے، بیٹیاں تڑپتی تھی دیکھتے رہے بیٹے، ہے نشان بی بی کے، ہے نشان بی بی کے بازوؤں پہ درے کا، ہائے غربت زہرا، ایک شکستہ تربت پر مرتضیٰ کا ہے نوحہ، ہائے غربت زہرا، ہائے غربت زہرا، وہ سند کے ٹکڑوں کو چن رہی تھی مسجد میں، اپنے شہر میں ہو کر اجنبی تھی مسجد میں، مصطفیٰ کی بیٹی کو، مصطفیٰ کی بیٹی کو کوئی بھی نہ پہچانا، ہائے غربت زہرا، ہائے غربت زہرا، فرش غم بچھاتی تھی گھر میں فاطمہ زہرا، انتظار کرتی تھی روز پرسداروں کا، گھر جلا کے لوگوں نے، گھر جلا کے لوگوں نے باپ کا دیا پرسا، ہائے غربت زہرا، ایک شکستہ تربت پر مرتضیٰ کا ہے نوحہ، ہائے غربت زہرا، ہائے غربت زہرا، ہے یقین تکلم یہ مصطفیٰ بھی روتے ہیں، ہے یقین تکلم یہ مصطفیٰ بھی روتے ہیں، دیکھ کر غریبی یہ انبیاء بھی روتے ہیں، دھوپ میں ہے شہزادی، دھوپ میں ہے شہزادی قبر پر نہیں سایہ، आए गुर्बत ज़हरा एक शिकस्त तुरबत पर मुर्तज़ा का है नौहा आए गुर्बत ज़हरा आए गुर्बत ज़हरा बर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलवात.
Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad Salawat. Can you please ask Surah Fatiha for all Marhumin, Surah Al-Mubarakat Al-Fatiha. Can I request the youth to please come forward so that people who come late, so it's easier for them to come out, so find space. Bar Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad Salawat. Can you please invite Brother Sadiq Damani to the member with loud Salawat. Bar Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad Salawat.
Before we begin, inshallah, in honor of all of our ulama who have given their everything to preserve this faith for us, for all of our shuhada, for all of the marhameen of those here present, and for all of the marhameen who have no one to make dua for them, rahimallahu man qara'a surat al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm still holding out, the slides will come through. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، خاتم النبيين، سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، واللعنة الله على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. وصلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا لثارات الحسين، يا حجة الله، يا ابن الحسن، يا صاحب العصر والزمان. اللهم صل على محمد وجعل. My dearest elders, brothers, sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It's very difficult during these days of Fatimiyyah when you recite this initial khutbah and you have to send your salam on the Holy Prophet. You think about a father who goes through what he saw from the heavens to take place just a mere 70, 90 days after his departure. From an ummah that guaranteed that they would follow him and promised that they would follow him and pledge their allegiance to him and pledge their allegiance to Ali ibn Abi Talib. And then within days, they're at the door of Zahra. Wallahu a'lam. Yesterday, we had the opportunity to gather together and to look and remind ourselves as to what our USP in life is. And by looking at our USP and recognizing that it was our aql and the usage of our aql, we then looked at why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create the aql in the first place. And once we realized that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the aql solely for man to go and listen to the commandments of Allah, to obey the commandments of Allah, we then went and understood, well, what does Allah command us to do? To which we understood one of those obligations, one of those commands is وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, to be in a constant state of worship. So, my intellect says, follow. The order says, worship. The intellect says, worship, and then that's where we are now. One of the most important types of worship that we see in the religion of Islam, arguably depending on the lens that you look at it through, the most important could be salah. It is the one that never leaves us. It is the one that Shaykh bin Ahyan describes as being the best mentor you could ever have. If you think about a personal trainer or a personal coach, you want someone who is there 5 a.m. on the dot, knocking on your window saying, Sadiq, it's time to get to the gym. And every single day this personal trainer comes. But you see, personal trainers of today, when you stop paying them, they stop coming. Salah, even if you've forgotten it for 20 years, it's still knocking on your door at 5 a.m. saying, Sadiq, it's time to wake up. Salah never abandons you. No matter your health, no matter your wealth, no matter your creed, no matter your destination, no matter if you are in your last breaths or you're just turning baligh in your age of 9, 10, 11, 12. And this is why Salah is a very special place within the religion of Islam, especially within this bracket of worship. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. So our aql therefore tells us to worship. And yesterday we had a look at Sayyida Zahra's Fadak sermon. And within that, she has a section where she establishes jurisprudence towards the ummah. So again, when people say that our women are not empowered, I'm saying, well, what's your definition of empowerment? She was a jurist. Is that not enough empowerment? And within this, she says, وَالصَّلَاةُ تَنْزِيهًا لَكُمْ عَنِ الْكِبْرِ. She says, earlier in the sentence, Allah made, and then she lists a few of these different things that are covered within Islamic jurisprudence. Allah made prayer as a means of freeing yourselves from al-kibr. Al-kibr in Arabic is arrogance. So only she reminded us of salah, she's given us an understanding as to why salah has been described for us, prescribed for us. According to some of our scholars of ethics, they say that arrogance is the headline, and feeding into it are three things. There's a few more, but in simplicity, one of them is spite, one of them is jealousy, and another one is known as riya, showing off. Takabbur, arrogance, is esteeming oneself, believing in yourself so much that you now look down upon others with disdain, with disrespect. And no matter what this person says to you, no matter what status that they have, your arrogance has taken you over so much that I can't even accept any opinion, no matter even if you're more knowledgeable than me, wiser than me, more spiritual than me, I don't care. I've got to this point where I have so much pomp and belief in myself that I don't listen anymore. What feeds that? Jealousy. What feeds that? Spite. What feeds that? Our focus for today? Riya. Showing off. Ensuring that every single person knows every single act and deed that I'm doing. This is what can contribute towards takabbur, which is what Sayyida Zahra was saying. This salah that's come is to free you from this takabbur. So today, inshallah, we want to look at this. Oh, mashallah, we have a nice little PDF export challenge here. How beautiful. That's meant to say al-ikhlas and al-riya. The two challenges. The challenge, one versus the other. Al-riya versus al-ikhlas. Ikhlas being the thing that is pure, that is unblemished, that is purified, that is extracted sincere with absolute purity. And to do that, we're going to be under the guidance of one of our dear ulama who recently passed away in the holy city of Qom. For those of you who can recognize him, his name is Ayatollah Misbah Yazdi, buried next to the dear Agha Behjat, next to Sayyidina Ma'sooma alayhi salam, in Qom, in his book Ascension to Infinity. Now, I don't typically take some of our weekly classes and present them in a majlis format, but actually I thought from speaking to some of the community, I'm being told that mashallah this is a very intellectual community. Therefore intellectuals read. So I'm going to expect you guys to read now. That's the downside, right? So these books, if you would like a copy, let us know and we'll arrange it for you inshallah. But I want to give you a sneak preview as to some of the discussions that go on within these books that can really elevate ourselves, or more specifically, it's Ayat al-Misbah names the book, or the publisher named it, can ascend you towards infinity. We're over the whole clickbait titles in this community. I don't think we need that. We need some look deep within our souls, tough reflection, tough conversation, and inshallah we can get rid of this takabbur through our salah and ascend towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you'd like to go on this journey, kindly offer salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. We're going to look at this in 3 stages. The first thing is the status of sincerity in prayer. Why is it that sincerity in prayer is so important? What's the big deal? Is it actually as big a deal as we think? Secondly, we're going to look at Riyā in a bit more detail. What is this showing off that contributes towards arrogance, which Sayyidah Zahra said, Salah should get rid of this for you. And the last thing we're going to do is going to have a bit of a tough moment where we're going to look at some real signs if showing off is actually taking place in my life, if Riyā exists. And then we're going to finally reflect on, is there Riyā within our communities today? And how are our children seeing a community full of Riyā, full of arrogance? And rather than looking at things through the lens of Tawheed, we're showing our children a lens of celebrity, Shi'i culture. And I'm sure you can see what I'm trying to get at between those lines. The status of sincerity in prayer, Agha Misbah begins as follows. He says that your intention behind any act that you do is fundamental. This is obvious to us. Because with any act, it could be accepted or rejected. And the thing that makes the difference here is your intention. Something that you can't see, someone that no one else can see, something that is only between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we see the importance of the intention very, very clearly. The lowest level of intention is the Khoja classic 19th of Shahr Ramadan, 21st of Shahr Ramadan, 23rd of Shahr Ramadan, 15th Sha'ban vibe, which I call the tick box a'mal. You just got to get it done and go and go and go and go. I'm not saying there's an issue with volume of dua. Go for it. But if it's a tick box mentality, Agha Misbah is saying, look, just be mindful. Don't just do it because Allah told you to. That's a nice thing, right? That's a nice thing. If Allah obligates you to do something, it's infinitely better that you do it than you don't do it. But if you're trying to ascend towards infinity, it's not just a tick box game. Because something that is performed is not necessarily accepted. I bought flowers for my wife, but I was grumpy in the process. She may be like, okay, tick, you bought me flowers. Did it really catch her heart? Am I really getting biryani the next day? Or is it going to be dal again? I have to check it out. Done versus accepted. For the deed to be accepted, Agha Misbah says it must be performed sincerely and purely for the sake of getting nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In every single one of our deeds, when we make the niyyah, especially when we're taught in madrasa, we're told you need to do Salatul Maghrib qurbatan ila Allah ta'ala. Qurba, nearness, seeking nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes we think for the pleasure, but then they're like, I thought Allah doesn't get pleased. He doesn't have feelings. So we have to be very mindful how we explain this to our children. No, it's nearness towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And through this spiritual development and perfection, we get nearness. Okay, there's 3 types of worship that many of you guys will be familiar with. And we're going to rush through this part because I'm sure you are. The first type that our narrations tell us is the worship of slaves. The individual who performs something purely out of fear of punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no issue in this, but we want to ascend to infinity. What's the next step? The worship of the tradesperson, of the merchant. The one who does and acts in the hope of getting something back from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm a business guy. I'll give you this, you give me that. I know heaven's on the line, let me take it from you. The third and the most elevated type of intention is the worship of the one who is free, the one who does something purely out of seeking nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. This is pure flawlessness, pure sincerity to Allah. There's no motive of the self involved. It's purely worshipping Allah because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a tough, long, tricky journey that we all need to try and go on to. And when you get there, you become an individual that is completely annihilated in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's majesty. Ayatollah Munir Khabbas, he says in one of his books on Imam al-Mahdi, when he describes the relationship of an individual with Allah, especially the one that Imam al-Mahdi wants to meet, he says, if you take a cup and you get some milk, a cup of milk, and you add some honey to it, and I was to ask you, so what is this? You would say, well, it's a cup of milk and honey. You'd identify there's two separate things. Even though I've put it inside, I've mixed it for 2 hours, then inside there's a cup of milk and honey. But if I take a glass of water and I put sugar inside and I mix it for a few seconds, you tell me, yeah, this is still water. It's sweet though. One is completely dissolved. One is two separate entities. Our journey is to be completely annihilated within Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Completely dissolved in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The only way that I identify myself is the same way that Imam Hussein identifies himself in Ziyarah Ashura, an abd of Allah. I don't need an identity. My identity is that I belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I'm a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you are the worship of the slave, or if you're doing the worship of the merchant, you cannot reach complete sincerity because the I is still involved in those two. Whereas option 3, there is no selfishness left. There's no I left. Yesterday we said, how do I see the world? If I see the world through the lens of anything other than Tawheed, there's a level of me involved. As soon as there's me involved, Allah is not the absolute focus, and we'll see the ramifications of that shortly. Allama Majlisi has a very, very scary discussion in Bahar al-Anwar, where he talks about this gaining closeness towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That really wakes us up as to how tough this really is. He says, as for the intention of gaining qurba, this is the most difficult of things. It cannot be achieved when wanting to perform prayers. I.e., you can't just rock up to your prayer mat and be like, this one is the sincere one. It doesn't work that way. There's steps before. It's how you've lived the previous part of the day. It's how you've lived the last week. It's how you lived your life. You don't just rock up and decide. It's a transformational journey that takes years. He says, rather, acquiring the sincere intention of wanting to gain closeness to Allah is dependent on great struggles, correct mindset, and removing the love of this world, wealth, worldly statuses from oneself. You'll see in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about these the wealth, worldly statuses as ghurur. Ghurur, when you look at the translation, the discussion that Allama Tabatabai has about it, he describes it as being things that beguile you, that enchant you, that just charm you as you walk through the world. Thinking, yeah, that money does charm me, doesn't it? And it does distract me from this pure, sincere journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What else does Allama Majdi says? He says, in all of these stages, one must beseech the Almighty to grant them the disposition, the potential, and success and guidance from Him. Look at how dependent we are on Allah. In order to get to Allah, I ask Allah to help me get there. I'm completely dependent. So when we look at this whole isms of yesterday saying, I am an independent, free thinker. No, you're not. You're completely dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't start the journey in the wrong way. Get on the journey of Tawheed and you'll see it very differently. Each person then acts to their own disposition, how you've nurtured your soul over the years. And each person's intention is subject to what is in their heart. Is it love of Allah? Or is it love of the world, love of status, love of money, or love of anything else except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He continues, of course, eradicating all of these roots of symptoms from the self is extremely difficult and challenging, and correcting one's intention to be absolutely perfect is almost impossible. And hence we see the Holy Prophet say, Niyyatul mu'min khayrun min amalih, that the intention of the believer is better than his act. If you're not looking through the world of a completely tawheedi lens, then all of this a'mal that we're doing is for what? For the self? And this is why we started our discussion yesterday this way. The lens has to be on firmly. He continues, and this is super frightening. He says, how many worshippers are attached to the world and they think their intention is purely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in their entire life, in reality, they have just been worshipping their own selves and their desires. أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَى. Have you seen the man who's taken his own passion or desire as his own Lord? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us. Have you seen that guy? Have I seen it in myself? Why was I worshipping you that day, Allah? Yeah, it was for myself, wasn't it? Day before, it was for myself, innit? What about that Shahr Ramadan? Yeah, it was for myself, wasn't it? Have I ever done a single bit of amal that was absolutely khalis? Completely sincere. Completely tawheed. How many bits of amal have I done in my life? Yeah, can I truly say one of them was absolutely khalis? So now you can see the importance and the status of sincerity in prayer. If you can reach it, ajib, you're on the journey for the awliya. But this is the journey to get there. Now what stops us? Many things stop us. But one of the things that we're highlighting today is riya, is showing off. Why? Because we're saying this connects to arrogance, and Sayyida Zahra is telling us this salah will help you remove your arrogance, and inshallah we'll go into this next section with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So what is riya? Some intentions completely nullify our amal. So we could have done this, what would otherwise be seen as a praiseworthy act, that in the eyes of the people say, MashaAllah, Sadiq, look at what you're doing. But in reality, it's all been nullified, is the terminology that Agha Misbah uses. In fact, it could be so much so that not only is it nullified, but the act actually works against you and counts as a sin. Yani this very lecture that I do, because you guys are so merciful, you say, nice job, Sadiq. In reality, this could actually work against me in my akhirah. Why? Riya. This is one of the most critical obstacles that prevents us from ascending towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like the peacock. We show off. We try to show our talent. Look at how quickly I can speak English. That's why you invited me here. What's really going on inside? Am I doing it to seek the praise of the others or to get that qurba ilahi? Mullah Faith Kashani in his massive book on morals and ethics says, no, that showing off in worship is forbidden and that Allah despises a show-off. Thought I was doing to get closer to Allah, and now I'm being told that He despises me. Where's the evidence? If you look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a number of verses looks at riya and attaches it to different types of amal. مثلا, you look at Surah Al-Ma'un. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Woe to those who pray. What? Why is Allah saying woe to those who pray? Now, what do the social media legends do when they get a verse like this and they want to attack Islam? They'll take this verse and post that and say, look, Allah told you to pray 5 times a day and He's telling you, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Woe to those who pray. This is how messed up this religion is. You're like, dude, read the next verse, please. Just like when we cherry pick a nice verse and the next part of the verse is about, and fear the day of judgment, right? No, don't show that verse to our kids. No, we need to show it all. Don't just show a religion of one half. Show the whole thing. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. So woe to those who pray. Why? Who? الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ. Those who pray in what state? Sahun. They are heedless of their prayer. الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءُونَ. Riya. Those who are actually just show-offs. Allama Tabatabai expands on this point of sahun, saying this is synonymous with ghafilun, ghafla, negligence, heedlessness. Those who don't give importance to their prayers, they miss their time. They miss their appropriateness. Now, for those of you who enjoy Arabic grammar, look very closely here. You can't see my cursor, sorry. There's, and I think the font has messed up. I'm very, very, very sorry. Inshallah khair. You guys know the Quran, the mashallah, you're all reciting it anyway. So, if you look at that, the first verse, it says, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. The fa at the beginning of this verse is very important. if you listen to an Arab speak, when they're trying to like bridge between the previous and the next sentence and they're trying to just figure out what they're going to say, they may say يعني, it means. So they're saying, from that thing I've just said, it means. Or they'll say fa, and then they'll just kind of wait a little bit whilst they think of their sentence. It kind of means therefore. So when you see the fa and then a sentence, you know that whatever is about to be said is connected to the thing that was just said before. So what was just said in the previous part of this surah? فَوَيْنٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Therefore, woe to those who pray. What were you speaking about previously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You look earlier in the surah and it says, أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ. Have you seen the one who denies the day of retribution? فَوَيْلٌ after a couple of verses, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. You seen those guys? Who are they? They're the ones who pray in a state that is heedless, in a way that is showing off. I.e., those individuals who pray in a way of showing off and heedlessness, they know about this day of judgment, yet they're not even that bothered about it. They just continue to pray in a manner that is full of riyah. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam in his discussion on الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ says that is the delaying of the prayer from its time without any excuse. Just to pause on the point here, we rely to understand the Quran on the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Please don't go anywhere else. It's irrational to go anywhere else. They tell us what this actually means. That is the delaying of the prayer from its prime time without any excuse. Amir al-Mu'mineen also discusses this, saying no deed is more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the ritual prayer. Do not let any worldly concern distract you from its times. Any. For indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has disapproved of some groups by saying sahun. They are the individuals who are sahun. They are heedless of their prayers and not committed to their times. It doesn't just stop there though. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has another verse specifically with regards to salah again. إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهِ. Verily the hypocrites seek to deceive Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah in the next part says, وَهُوَ خَادِعُهُمْ. But actually it's Allah who deceives them. What are they trying to deceive? And where does Allah catch them? وَإِذَا قَامُوا إِلَى صَلَاتِ قَامُوا. And when they stand for prayer, they stand in what state? Kusala. Lazily. يُرَاءُونَ النَّاسِ. Trying to show off to the people. وَلَا يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And they don't remember Allah except for a little. And you're asked to come and lead salah. Yeah, I'm there, no issues. But at home, I'm the last one to get out. I'm the last one to get out. I think I'm deceiving. Allah immediately comes back at us. No, it's Allah that's going to deceive you. It's Allah that outwits you. Allah knows the game. You want to play the game of riyah? Allah knows all about it. And hence we see this difference between al-ikhlas and al-riyah. Of sincerity and showing off. These two polar opposites. Al-ikhlas is the opposite of al-riyah. Performing something for the sake of adherence to divine command and acquiring God's content is this pure sincerity that we're aiming for. No other intention involved. Now, you may find in some instances though, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, go and perform this amal and encourage others to do it. Do it in public. قُلْ لِعِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Tell my servants who have faith to do what? يُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ. Maintain the prayer. وَيُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ. And to spend out of what we provided them with in two ways. سِرًّا, secretly, وَعَلَانِيَّةً, and openly. Allah is now telling me go and do both. But there's a big warning whenever we're told about these actions that we should go do in public. Because narrations exist on both sides. Go give secretly and go give privately. Go give publicly. Why public? Because it encourages others to go and do the deeds. But you're warned and warned and warned, but be careful of your intention in that moment. Unfortunately now, our default stance has been what? If I go to Iraq and if I go and give charity, the whole jama'ah needs to know about it. I've got to make sure everyone knows. Now that one maybe wakes up the adults. My youngsters, if I go to Iraq, I have to post my picture of me in Karbala. First priority. Back in my day, it was checking on Facebook. Maybe the elders are also with me on that one, right? You have to check in. And then if you post it at the wrong time, I need to delete it and upload at 8 p.m. the next day because that's when I'm going to get the most traction. What happened to us? As soon as we were able to share, we were ready to share. I feel we were more sincere when it wasn't possible to do that. But now everyone's got to know what I'm doing. I need to make sure my WhatsApp status is updated that I've arrived in Karbala, and my Instagram story, and my Facebook story, and my Snapchat. And you know what? I'm going to send 10 forwards to 10 different family groups as well. Now, you could have the most sincere of intentions. That's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So don't go and judge. But if you're doing it with a little bit in your head of saying, let me just get some jawab from the family, then perhaps we've got a deeper issue. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a very scary warning, my dear brothers and sisters. This narration is one of those where you kind of just panic a bit. And let's ease our hearts a little bit before we say this narration with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And I just want you to think about a lot of the amal that's going on in our communities, the general English-speaking Shia community today. Just have a lot of these things in mind. Especially the kind of projects that you think you're like, yeah, these are great projects. Keep them in the top of your head. Everything is open to assessment. Nothing is beyond assessment. The Holy Prophet says that Allah says, "Man amila amalan ashraka fi ghayri." When someone performs a deed for me, Allah, when someone performs a deed for me, as well as for someone else, فَهُوَ لَهُ كُلُّهُ. Then the latter, the other person, can have all of it. وَأَنَا مِنْهُ بَرِيء. And I, Allah, disassociate myself from it. وَأَنَا أَغْنَى الْأَغْنِيَاءَ عَنِ الشِّرْكِ. And I am the most self-sufficient and do not need to be associated with anything to me. Let me just break that down. If we do an amal, 99% intention, qurbatan ilallahi ta'ala, 1% for the likes, 1% for the mu'mineen to know, 1% maybe for my wife to be proud of me and impressed with me or whatever it is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when someone performs a deed for me as well as for someone else, the latter can have it all and I'll disassociate myself. Khalis is something absolutely pure. Think about these initiatives we've got going on in the community. What kind of environment are we nurturing at the moment in our community? Is it one of sincerity, truly sincerity? One of ikhlas? Or one, let's not say it's riddled, but has sprinkles of riyah on top of it? Am I supporting that? Have I fallen into the trap? Am I complicit in that? That's something for each of us to go and assess. In fact, it gets even more frightening, and the emoji there is just to kind of soften the tone a bit. إِنَّ الْمَلَكَ لَيَسْعَدُ بِعَمْلِ الْعَبْدِ مُبْتَهِجًا بِهِ. You do an act, the angels write down the reward, or write down that it's happened. What happens? The angel ascends, carrying the good deeds of the servant. What's the implication here? You've done something you think is good. Angel is good. Angel starts taking it up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَإِذَا سَعِدَ. But as the angel ascends, بِحَسَنَاتِهِ, with your hasanat, يقول الله عز وجل. But Allah then tells the angel, اجعلوها في السجين. Place this deed into the sijjin. What is that? It's the name that is given in the Quran to the written record of the evildoers' deeds. I thought it was good. I thought it was good. Angel thought it was good. Angel was on the way. Allah calls out, take that deed and put it somewhere else. Why? إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ إِيَّايَ أَرَادَ بِهَا. For he did not do those deeds for me. Yani even the angels don't know. It's gone through the basic checkpoints. But Allah knows the exact, precise intention within my heart. I'd say the Misbah then comments in this part of the book. He says, there are so many more of these narrations that I feel if I shared them all with you, you're probably left with hopelessness. So he just leaves it there. This is something really important for our community to think about. It's taken us by storm. These last 10, 15 years, unrecognizable to the previous 15 years. I was speaking with some of my friends in Oman, Omani guys, about some of the ongoings in the Shia community here in the UK and in the US and Canada. They were jaw dropped. What faith are you following? I won't go into the details, but you guys know what I'm thinking about and talking about. They were shell shocked. So we've got to be mindful of our intention. When praying, when fasting, when doing Hajj, these kind of things, this is just between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if it's dodgy, it's not going to be accepted. No value. If I'm doing khums or zakat, also not valuable. The only value that will be remained is that I've given some money to someone. They'll get some benefit out of that money. I'm getting nothing. So the intention of qurbah has to be at the heart of every single amal that we're doing. يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ, desiring only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as he says in Surah Al-An'am. إِلَّا ابْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ رَبِّهِ الْأَعْلَى, and he only seeks the pleasure of his Lord, the most exalted, as we see in Surah Al-Layl. So you can't just turn up to your prayer mat and say, this is going to be the sincere prayer. No. It's how was your iqamah. It's how was your adhan. In fact, after your iqamah and your adhan, what did you do before you began your salah? How focused were you in this moment before takbirat al-ihram? What was running through your head at that point? What was the reason for this salah? How did you do your wudu? Shaykh bin Ahyan in his book describes so beautifully. He says, if I'm going to have a guest come home and they've already arrived and I need to wash the fruit, you're not going to see me splashing the place down, washing the fruit in front of them. It would be an improper etiquette. Yani, it doesn't make a difference to the taste of the fruit, but there's an etiquette by which I wash this thing before I present it to my guest. When I'm in my wudu, am I leaving it like a flood, like some of our brothers and sisters do in different sects of the faith? Or am I doing it with a level of ihtaram, a level of respect? And even before that, when I wake up, am I planning my day to say, I'm going to end that meeting at this time so then I can have enough time for my wudu, so then I can do my adhan, so then I can do my... Am I thinking about it this much? And this is why when you start to stack this all together, you see how this becomes the mi'raj, the ascension of the belief. So what are some of the signs that perhaps we are either being sincere or we're showing off? Classic ones. You donate to a hospital and someone else's name is put on the plaque. How do you react? You've cooked crazy nice meals to look after someone visiting, or someone's had a bereavement in their family, and you've gone through so much pain to cook and cook and cook, and subhanAllah, this faith makes us look after one another constantly. It's a beautiful faith in that regard. But someone else gets the credit when the guy gives the final speech. If there is a glimmer of frustration or annoyance or a bit of upset, know that there is a good chance it wasn't absolutely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just a fact that we have to accept. As much as it annoys us to admit it, it's just a fact we have to accept that, you know what? I was kind of doing it for the clout. And then we just pray hard that Allah's not going to send that amal back, as we saw in those narrations. Because the angels could be on the way. They could think it was a decent one. But Allah knows what's going deep into the heart. Ayat al-Misbah in his book talks about a man who used to go to a very specific masjid. He used to pray behind a very, very notable alim. 30 years, he says. First row, vice captain position, yani right behind him. Number 9, if you know what I mean. Right there. 30 years. One day he turns up, doesn't get his number 9 vice captain position. Relegated, second row. During that salah, he starts to realize something wasn't right about this salah. And after reflecting, he's like, all this time I've been turning up just to get the prime position. He goes to repeat 30 years worth of prayers. SubhanAllah, he had the sincerity to admit to himself, right, if I found out I had 30 years of prayers to go, that's not happening, right? I'm dying and leaving a few thousand for some poor student in Qum to have to do it on my behalf, probably, right? That's our khoja way out of things nowadays when it comes to salah. Any way to buy our way through, we'll do it. True. The level of sincerity that we need to get to is extreme, extreme. The scary thing, though, is that this insincerity and this riyā is compared to one of the most tragic things that we hear about in our faith. Shirk is associated with riyā. The Holy Prophet is giving some guidance to Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala He's giving him some information about what good companions need to be aware of so that they can be raised with the Anbiya, with the Awliya, etc. And amongst them, the Holy Prophet says to Amir al-Mu'mineen, وَلَا تُرَائِ, do not show off. فَإِنَّ أَيْسَرَ الرِّيَاءِ, even the slightest form of showing off, shirkun. It's shirk. Billahi Azza wa Jal. It's associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how have we gone through this whole thing? Like I was meant to be doing this amal in the masjid, praying salah, and I was actually committing shirk in the process. It gets scarier though. The Prophet then talks about shirk, and he's reported to say, Inna shirk akhfa min. It's more hidden than what? Dabib an-naml. This creeping of an ant. What color is an ant? Black, dark brown, right? Dark color. Polytheism, shirk, is more hidden than the creeping. How silent is it? Of the ant, which is black. Ala safatin sawada, on a black rock, fi laylatin dhulma, on a dark night. We don't even know that it's coming. But it's there. Now imagine for the state that some of our community events and initiatives have got to, where it's so loud that it's happening. Imagine how long ago it's been going on and how many of our general affairs within the community, it's there creeping all over the place. You know, like when you move a doormat and you haven't moved it for the best part of 5 years, and then you just see thousands of ants below. Okay, I'm not going to look at that one again. I wonder if we were to really look through the lens of Tawheed into our community activities, how many creeping ants of shirk would we see all over my actions and my amal and everything that I'm trying to do? But we're not going to call it out because we have to be quiet and we have to maintain the status quo. Yes, there's a level of respect we need to hold to each other, but there's nasiha that we need to give to each other as well, to myself before anyone, of course. Al-Misbah says that this polytheism infiltrates so quietly. And perhaps this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا يُؤْمِنُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ بِاللَّهِ إِلَّا وَهُمْ مُشْرِكُونَ. And most of them do not believe in Allah without ascribing partners to Him. Most of them. Of course, there's levels of polytheism, and we're not here talking about, وَلَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ, worshipping idols, but we're still on the journey of ascribing partners towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In some acts, this riyā is easier to detect than others. When you look at, for example, an individual who gives lectures or classes, a scholar, for example, who climbs onto the pulpit and gives these discussions, this is a very esteemed thing in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for sure. But again, even for that scholar, is he as engaged and as focused and as loving and caring to his one-to-one audience as he is to his 1 to 10,000 audience? If there is a glimmer of difference in that approach, perhaps again, there is a chance that there is some riyā involved. Who can tell me who this is? Ayame Fatimiyyah. At least it's a picture that we think is of Ayame Fatimiyyah. I hope it is, inshallah. That's the one that we have online anyway. Fine. Who can tell me what that is? Bihar al-Anwar. How many volumes in the current edition of Bihar al-Anwar? 110. Yeah, something around this. I think we've just Shiafied the number to 110 probably, so we'll go with it. Who knows what this is? Oh, it's gone back. Oh no. There we go. No? Interesting. Okay, there we go. Bihar al-Anwar, so yeah, that was right. We mentioned yesterday, it starts with Kitab al-Aqli wal-Jahl, just like Al-Kafi. By the way, I find it really funny that people are trying to go after Allama Majlisi at the moment. SubhanAllah, I wish they could compile a few books like he has and then perhaps start to talk about him in a bit more of a respectful manner. But anyway, let's move on. Who knows what this is? Mir'at ul-Uqul. What is that? Another book by Allama Majlisi. What is it? Not quite falsafa. So imagine, Allama Majlisi, 110 volumes of Bihar al-Anwar, 30 something years, over 300 or 387 different books cited, however many narrations that are then included into their thousands. You're thinking, subhanAllah, like this guy, you've done a good job, bro. Fair enough. He doesn't stop there though. He then decides to go to Mir'atul Uqul, which is a commentary on Al-Kafi. 16,000 narrations. Let me just write a commentary on all of those. Are you done yet? No, Allama Majlisi is not done. What else does he do? He then goes and writes a commentary on another one of the famous 4 books. And then he writes Haqqul Yaqeen. Then he writes Hilyatul, etc. How many books is this guy going to write? What a scholar. Why am I making such a fuss about him? And this is where I'm going to read to you just before we go to the slide. And forgive me if I can go a few minutes over. I'd be very, very grateful, inshallah. Please forgive me. I just want to read you this and hopefully inspire you to start reading from our ulama what they have to say. Aizal al-Misbah says, there is a story about Allama al-Majlisi. And then he says, look at the honesty. I'm not certain about its authenticity. But remember, if someone like Aizal al-Misbah is writing this, he's not just putting in a joke story for the sake of it. Yeah, he's going to have some level of understanding as to what's behind it. Anyway, he says, I'm not certain about its authenticity, but nonetheless, it does have a practical lesson, even if it didn't occur in this in this particular way. It is said that after the passing away of Allama Majlisi, someone saw him in his dream and asked him, what is it that saved you? From all of the services that you gave, all those books that you wrote, all those lessons that you taught, what was the thing that was most useful to you? Allama Majlisi replies, none of these things I did had as much use as I expected. Because for each one of them, there were some faults and some defects. SubhanAllah, if he's saying that, like I'm looking at I can't even fill up 1 volume worth of good deeds, and he's got volumes worth of hadith, let alone his good deeds. So he was asked, what was it that saved you? He said, one day I was walking in a street whilst holding an apple. And there was a woman, he says, I think it was a Jewish woman, walking with her son in her arms. And the child happened to see the apple in my hand. From how the young boy reacted, I could tell that he wanted to take it from me. And when the mother saw him, she prevented him from doing so. I then went forward and gave the kid this apple to make him happy. Now in this realm, I'm being told that the only deed that I did which was 100% sincere and khalis was this deed, as it had no level of flattering a ruler, or wanting fame, or showing off, or anything else. I gave that apple to him purely to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to bring happiness to that young boy. And then we look at our community activities today. No showing off, no celebrity culture. And what kind of things are we organizing? And what's scary is that we said yesterday we need to make sure we look at things through a Tawheedi, Fatimi, Alawi and Muhammadi lens. This is what we need to be doing, right? How they saw the world, I need to see the world. They see it through absolute Tawheed, absolute sincerity, no Riyah. I worry, are we showing to our kids a world of Muwahideen, or are we showing them a Shi'i world full of show-offs and thereby arrogance? They're going to passively be seeing this, passively looking at it. Who can I take pictures with? Is it about running up to him and taking a picture with him afterwards? Is it about getting signed autograph? Why are we taking Western concepts of celebrities into our faith? How desperate are we? Because we're not inspired by the right people. Let's face the music. This is where we find ourselves. And the worry is, this is similar to what happened at the time in Medina. Arrogance was plaguing the community. Arrogance, we said, causes you to look at others with disdain. You don't think that the person that you're looking at is worthy of any respect. It doesn't matter their maqam, it doesn't matter their status. I know better, this is how I've got to do it, and you've just got to be there on the side. And the more arrogant you become, it doesn't matter how respected that individual is. You could have studied one day in the Hawza, but your arrogance has taken over you. And you're like, this Sayyid Sistani, what does he know? This marja here, what does he know? I've studied for 5 years and look at all my refutations towards them. Okay, maybe you're right. But show us the humility that Sayyid Sistani shows. Show us the humility that Wahid shows. Why do you need to take this other approach? Remember, in these first couple of nights, during the Masa'ib, I want to give you a bit of a taste as to what's going on in Medina at this time and the atmosphere, because this event of the door doesn't just take place from nowhere. There are certain trends you see in people that once we get this picture, you're like, I get it now. Like when you hear certain politicians, they've done an action, you're not so surprised because you know what their general perception of life has been for the last 15 years. Imam Ali alayhi salam, all of us would agree, flawless. Nobody rational would say that he was a man full of sin, a man full of hate. No, every rational person had full praise for him. So much so that the Prophet says, "Oh Allah, please support anyone who supports Ali. And be the enemy of anyone who takes Ali as an enemy. And defend anyone who defends Ali. And oppose anyone who opposes Ali." He also then says, "May Allah fight those who fight against you and fight those who fight you." So if there's any historical evidences that illustrate people fighting Ali ibn Abi Talib or showing some level of hatred or animosity or frustration towards Ali ibn Abi Talib, then by virtue of that, they're doing it against the Prophet. And if they're doing it against the Prophet, then they're doing it against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is the wrath that they involve even with words? Hatta, even if it is just words. Surah Al-Hujurat says, do not raise your voice above the voice of the Prophet. لا ترفعوا صوت أصوات صوت النبي. What's driving them? Arrogance, show-offs, hunger for power, celebrity status. This deen looks nice. My name on top of it looks better. I want to be the center point. When you think Islam, I want to be the one that's on top there. Otherwise, why else would they reject? Because they're more moral than Ali ibn Abi Talib? They're more merciful than him? They're wiser than him? Of course not. They go to him for guidance when they can't make rulings. So what was the other intention? So what kind of approach do these arrogant individuals take in the city of Medina? Sheikh al-Mufid cites in his book on the Battle of Jemal. In the beginning, he explains the situation at the time. He says a group of Bedouins came to the city of Medina to buy food. The people were preoccupied by the passing away of the Prophet, so nobody really cared about them. They had to witness the process of paying homage, and I'm reading history here, to Abu Bakr. Umar then summons them and says, receive your shares from paying homage to the successor of Allah's apostle, and then go out together to the people to force them to pay homage to him. If anyone refrains from responding to you in paying homage to Abu Bakr, you may strike his head and forehead with your swords. We're not talking about the door. I'm just reading history from their sources. This is their mentality. You don't listen, I strike you. It continues. I swear this. I saw those Bedouins girding themselves, putting aprons on made in Sana'a, holding their bars of wood, and they went out beating people randomly and bringing them against their will to pay homage to Abu Bakr. Not the event of the door, just general characteristics of how they would go about doing things if you have a disagreement with them. Does that sound like mercy? Does that sound like ikhlas? Or does that sound like the product of arrogance and riya? And whilst at the same time, the one that you say that I loved him and I cared for him and I learnt so much for him and my life was indebted to him and I wish I could have married his daughter. Oh, he's dead? Sorry, I couldn't make it to the funeral. I had some other priorities. Even if you went to his funeral, what were you thinking about? Well, when you found out that people were gathering somewhere else, you were running fast to go to the other AGM that was going on. And this is the product of arrogance. Not even after the Prophet's body has been buried, that's not even taken place, they're already discussing the next step. A report even tells us that Aisha was not even present at the funeral of the Prophet, and she didn't even know it was happening until the night of Wednesday, where she heard the spades shoveling. So what was her involvement in this entire affair as well? In contrast, the uncle, Al-Abbas, he says to Amir al-Mu'mineen, "O son of my brother, come forward so I can pledge allegiance to you, so that after this no one goes against you." Amir al-Mu'mineen replies, "Presently our duty is to prepare the Prophet's body for his burial." That is ikhlas. That was arrogance. What else is being said in Saqifa? Threats of killing. Threats of bloodshed. We're not talking about the door. I'm just saying how they go about doing their business. Threats of killing. Threats of bloodshed. Their own friends, if you don't listen, strike him. You need to understand this, my dear brothers and sisters. There is thuggery in the streets of Medina. There's riots in the streets of Medina. There's anarchy in the streets of Medina right now. A position they think has just opened up, but people couldn't see it at the time. They weren't lifting and seeing what was underneath. And so I wonder personally, this is my reflection, why did the Prophet need to emphasize? And I don't know any father, I've not met any father in my entire life, maybe you have. I've not met a single father who makes it so apparent to his community to say, "Fatima bid'atu minni," that this daughter of mine is part of me. فَمَنْ أَغْضَبَهَا أَغْضَبَنِي, and whoever angers her, angers me. Well, of course. Which father needs to say that if you anger my child, it's like you've angered me? Ya Rasulullah, why are you making this so explicit? Isn't it obvious? We're not just talking about any daughters. We're talking about Sayyidina Al-Ali. Why do you make it so obvious that if you anger her, it is as if you've angered me? Their book, Sahih al-Bukhari, not mine. I wonder, oh Rasulullah, was this a warning for what was to come to the house of Fatima? Sallallahu alayki ya sayyidati ya nisa'il alameen, ya mawlati Zahra, ya Fatima. Around the streets of Medina, the thugs start to go through house to house, getting the bay'ah from the people. There is no place in Medina safe from their anarchy. Anywhere in Medina, and in a few days, even the house of Ali and Zahra. Oh Rasulullah, I know that a mother cares deeply for their child, and if anyone were to hurt their child, they would be deeply angry at the attacker. Tell me, oh Rasulullah, what was the reaction of Zahra in paradise when she watched down upon the plains of Karbala? In one report from Saqifa, we read that one of these individuals threats another one of the men. He says he kicks people so hard that there wouldn't even be an unbroken bone in their body. Oh Rasulullah, this is what they would do to their friends. I ask you, what do they do to their enemies? I ask you, O Zahra, what about the broken bones of your son Hussein in Karbala? After they call who is ready to trample on the blessed body of Ibn Rasulillah, whoever angers Fatima has made you angry, O Rasulullah. How does Zahra look upon Karbala in this moment? Sayyidat an-Nisa al-Alameen, all I can say to you is this: إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة. فلعن الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن الإصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. ماتم حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين.
در بطول جلایا گیا مدینے میں، در بطول جلایا گیا مدینے میں، علی کو خون رولایا، علی کو خون رولایا گیا مدینے میں، در بطول جلایا گیا مدینے میں، در بطول جلایا گیا میں، در بطول جلایا مدینے میں، علی کو خون رولایا، علی کو خون رولایا گیا مدینے میں، در بطول در بطول جلایا گیا میں، نہ جانے کیا ہوا بعد نبی زمانے کو، نماز جس سے ہے قائم وہ گھر جلانے کو، نمازیوں کو بلایا، نمازیوں کو بلایا گیا مدینے میں، در بطول جلایا در مدینے میں، ستم تو یہ ہے کہ تماشائی بن گئی دنیا، کسی نے کچھ نہ کہا دیکھتی رہی دنیا، علی کو قیدی بنایا، علی کو قیدی بنایا گیا مدینے میں، گیا مدینے در بطول جلایا گیا میں، شکستہ پہلو جو زہرا دکھائی دیتی ہے، حدیث بضعت منی دہائی دیتی ہے، نبی کا خون بہایا، نبی کا خون بہایا گیا مدینے میں در در بطول جلایا کہا یہ بھائی نیک بھائی سے گلے لگ کر حسن بھلا نہیں سکتا حسین وہ منظر جب ہاتھ ماں پہ اٹھایا جب ہاتھ ماں پہ اٹھایا گیا مدینے میں در گیا مدینے میں گیا مدینے میں جواب کیا دیں علی پوچھتی ہے یہ بیٹی ہے بابا جلتا ہوا در گرا کے ماں پہ میری سنا ہے جشن منایا سنا ہے جشن منایا گیا مدینے میں در بطول جلایا میں ہوا یہ ظلم جو مسجد میں رو پڑے مولا وہ جس نے مارا تھا بنتے رسول کو درا وظیفہ اس کا بڑھایا وظیفہ اس کا بڑھایا گیا مدینے میں در بطول جلایا گیا در بطول جلایا سینے میں کہا رسول سے بنتے رسول نے جا کر فدک نہ دیتے مجھے کوئی غم نہیں تھا مگر میرا مذاق اڑایا میرا مذاق اڑایا گیا مدینے میں در در بطول جلایا میں یہ راز دفن ہے دو بھائیوں کے سینے میں نبی کی بیٹی کو مسجد میں گھر میں کوچے میں کہاں کہاں پہ ستایا کہاں کہاں پہ ستایا گیا مدینے میں در گیا مدینے میں حسن حسین کو پہچان ہی نہیں پائی تمام ہو گئی بنتے نبی کی بینائی تماچا ایسا لگایا تماچا ایسا لگایا گیا مدینے میں در بطول جلایا گیا مدینے میں در بطول جلایا گیا مدینے میں در بطول جلایا گیا مدینے میں یا حسین 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 اللہم صلی علی محمد.
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. السلام علیک یا رسول اللہ، السلام علیک یا امیر المؤمنین، السلام علیک یا فاطمۃ زہرا، السلام علیک یا حفیظ الکبرا، السلام علیک یا حسن مصطفیٰ، السلام علیک یا باپ الہ الحسین وعلی تسعۃ المعصومین من ذریتک علی بن حسین و محمد بن علی و جعفر محمد موسیٰ بن جعفر وعلی بن موسیٰ محمد بن علی وعلی بن محمد والحسن بن علی والحجۃ بن الحسن عجل اللہ فرجا صح اللہ محجا و ظہورا. السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. اللہم کل ولیک الحجۃ ابن صلواتک علیہ وعلی آبائہ فی هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها